Hello, test, test. That's me. Hooray for me. All right. I'm going to pin my video. I'm going to start this meeting pretty soon. Sorry I'm late. Thanks for coming. Look at all these people that are in here. This is great. Participants. Ooh, so many participants. All right. Find the right clipboard. Get this party started. Ah. All right, I'm going to turn on the chat room chat. And if any of you guys know of any fun things, let me know, especially if the internet is acting up, especially in student housing. I need to know that. But hopefully I'm coming through loud and clear and bright and shiny for most people. Let's see how things are going here. Adriel is right there. Look at that. All right. So Adriel's here and Alan is there. Connor is on page 2. Let's see. And Logan is right next to him. Jordan. Okay. Marion. Tristan the night away. We are Tristan the night away. Okay. Sorry, Tristan. Couldn't help myself. Okay. Well, as people arrive, I just want to let you know that I'm going to try to get us caught up from last week when we got a day behind. So that means I'm going to do things quickly and try to make this a twofer, 2 classes for the price of 1. And we're going to do a little bit of critique of the first project and start to get into the second project today, if possible. Amelia is here. Where are you? Right there. Okay. And people are coming in. If anybody wants to have a little bit of an icebreaker this morning, and you can unmute your mic and tell us a story, some fun thing that happened to you this weekend that you can actually share in polite society, that would be nice. A joke, anything of interest, something in the news that may have caught your attention. I've been teaching my son and his girlfriend motorcycle. So we've been running our motorcycles in parking lot number 3 on Saturdays and Sundays lately. And that's been a lot of fun. Gabby's here. All right. And Jordan and Marion and Rosalind is here. Yay. Okay. So far, so good. Well, 10 of you are in here, and there are 6 left to go. Here we go. Couple more. It's hard to keep track when there are so many people logging in. Marion, Logan, Jordan, Daniela. Okay. Over here. All right. The second page is all logged in now. The second page is all here. I just have a few people from the first page that aren't here. Did I see Bosch in here? Louise Branner. There we go. Hey, Lou, how's it going? All right. My mic is on. My beautiful video is on. I just about can't stand myself. Okay. You guys, Donovan's here. There's Mr. Bosch right there. So I'm just missing a couple, but we got 13 in the chat. I mean, today here with us, all of us today, which is good. We should just about open this thing and call it good. Connor, Donovan, Gabby, Jordan, Logan, Adriel, Allen. All right. This is kind of a funky way of taking attendance, but it's actually supposed to be a little bit easier than trying to ask you guys all your names, because that's kind of, silly too. Anyway, yeah, Jordan. Ezra, are you here? There's Ezra. Okay, fantastic. Louise, Marion, Maxence is here. Oh my gosh. Where is Libo? Right there. All right. Fantastic. This is quite frightening because just about everybody is here, and that is wonderful. Okay, I'm going to try to get us caught up from last week. So I'd like to try to do a little teeny tiny little bit of critiquing the oral critique process. I'd like to have some of you who are real Zoomers for this Zoom kind of a class meeting, hopefully you have finished this project and have photographed it, and maybe some of you could even click out of the meeting and open up your version of this so that you've got a document like this open on your desktop. That would be good. I'd like to critique a couple of them. I'm not going to be able to get to all of you today, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm going to be able to go through the coursework that you've all uploaded to me, and see your projects, and that'll be fantastic. For the good of the order, I don't think we need to do 15 oral critiques in this class altogether. After a couple oral critiques, you kind of get the hang of it. You kind of know what's going on here. So let's try this and see what happens. Does anybody, I can't call on you because I don't know whether you've got your project, open and on your desktop or not. But if anybody does, please feel free to unmute your mic and let me know. I'd be happy to turn the thing over to you. You can hit the share button and share your project, an image of your project with the group. And we can do that. Hey, Marion, look at that. You're there. Are you there?
Yeah.
Hello. How are you?
I can share mine.
Would you please? That would be fantastic. If you would go ahead, you can hit the green share button and you get to have control over the screen. Then you can open your project and hit share, and it will share on this, where my face is right now, to the whole group.
Okay, it says it's disabled.
Oh, that's me. I'm sorry. That's shoot. Okay, now it's on. Sorry about that. Oh, it's this technology stuff. That's a funny thing. And here we go.
Okay.
This is fantastic. And Marion.
Yeah, so I had to retake the picture because the other one was skewed a little bit and I didn't like it. But now this one's better.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I do appreciate that this is a photograph and that you've uploaded it to a Word, or you've imported it into a Word document that you've uploaded. So you've got your name and address and everything on there. Not address, but our class. That's wonderful. Okay, so I have a cursor that I can point at stuff. You have a cursor that you can point at stuff. Would you like to I don't know, present this at all? Do you want to talk about your group of 4 or your 5th square at all before I jump in and make a hash of it?
Okay, so I was thinking like that the one that's like the one square that's out of everyone else is kind of like going towards the other ones, and that's why they're closer together, far away, but as they get to the bigger square, they're spreading apart more.
Oh, so they're starting to like open up the group to be able to accept that 5th square. I see what you're doing there. So some of the proximities back here are closer together, but this proximity here opens up just a little bit. And I also really like the diagonal orientation of these things, so that they're kind of oriented to and pointing towards your 5th square. Now with your group of 4, you also do another thing here. You kind of have this implied negative space in here that is like a 6th square. Your little white negative space in the middle of your group of 4 is almost a square space too. So that's kind of a tricky thing. Was that on purpose, or is that just by accident?
No, but I was playing around with the squares a lot, and I decided that it looked best with a open negative space. It's not as big as like the other squares, but it's like I like that it opens up more towards the biggest square.
Yes, that is really cool. Um, I'd like to open this up, the conversation, the critique, to anybody else who might like to chime in at this point. Is there anything that jumps out at anybody else? If it's a thing that's not a really wonderful thing, but a little bit of a negative thing, be gentle in the way that you come in and characterize it or talk about it. If it's something that positive, please go ahead and we always love to accept praise. If anybody else wants to talk about um, Marion's project here, and it's always like pulling teeth trying to get anybody to say anything. Let me give you guys the easy thing to say. This is the last refuge of a scoundrel. Usually that's patriotism, is the last refuge of a scoundrel. But in this case, it's either identifying the composition as vertical or horizontal. So if you wanted to just come in and say, oh, this is a horizontal composition because of the orientation of the overall horizontal space in the composition, it is more on a horizontal format than a vertical. You could say that, and then you would be a scoundrel because you'd have said something that you have made a contribution to the oral critique, and yet it's a cheesy thing, and it's going to be our running joke in the class. So, and Logan, you should know this, so you get to do this. You can do this too because you've been through this before. This thing. Okay, Marion, thank you very much for sharing. This is fantastic. I do appreciate you being brave and going first. So, oh, she gave it back to me. There we go. If there's anybody else who has their project done, their project number 3, 5 squares, and would like to share it with the class, we're doing a fast and dirty oral critique today to try to get caught up with the morning class, because when we had our technical difficulty last week, we kind of got a day behind. So I'm going to get you guys caught up, even if it kills us all. Is there anybody else who might have a project that they would like to open up on your desktop and then share with the group? I just have to see who all else is here, because there's still one person I'm missing on my list of people that I have checked into the classroom. Maxence is in here? Yeah. Let's see. Carly, are you here? No. I guess it's just Carly. It's the only one that's gone. Okay. Last chance for anybody else to critique. That's what the oral critique is, a way for us to be able to share our projects with each other so that we can see what the other people have done in terms of coming up with a composition. And then it's to help us focus and sharpen our conversational skills so that we can use the vocabulary that we're kind of discovering in the book, and develop for ourselves a vocabulary of being able to talk about art, the different elements of art, and how they're relating to each other in a composition. Chapter 2 that we're going to look at this week is really going to open that up. I want you guys to start looking at and reading chapter 2. I hope that you've been able to get the book and read chapter 1. Oh my gosh, Alan is here. Hello, Alan.
Hey, just trying to figure out how to share it on the screen.
Okay, now you're coming in a little soft, so try to get either closer to your microphone or speak up a little bit. And I know that's hard. I love this. You were able to, again, upload or import to the um, Word document, and you did this. Now tell me, is this something that you did digitally, or was this done in the kind of the old school traditional way of collaging?
No, I used a ruler and a pen, and yeah, the old
Fantastic.
school way. Yeah.
Okay. So, so this is where all you guys, the rest of you, can unmute your mics and jump in if you want. Is there anything that anybody notices about the composition that they'd like to comment on?
Some of his squares are angled.
Well, there is that, and we want to be kind of gentle because you know, that might be a criticism, and you know, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings or anything in a critique, but we do have to talk about what's going on formally with some of the objects. So let me just, I've got my cursor here that I can play with, and so I can identify the group of 4 squares and then the 5th square out here. But one of the things that I was asking people to do on this project was to try to make sure that all of your squares were square, parallel and perpendicular to the edges of the format frame and to the edges of the format. And so these got a little bit fun. They're dancing around.
Oh yeah, I guess I misunderstood that. My
That's
bad.
okay. That's all right. And this kind of illustrates the idea of what happens when we do that, because the objects now become much more visually interesting. And there are now a couple of different ways that they can visually relate to each other. We're relating to each other in terms of proximity, but now we can also relate to each other in terms of angle. And so we have a lot more visual resonance and relationship between the group of 4 and the 5th square, now that a couple of them are kind of similarly turned like the 5th square is. So sometimes when we have so many different things that we can do with the squares, they can it becomes visually busy or distracting or something like that. But be that as it may, that's not a problem. I can see your group of 4. I can see that they're in close proximity to each other, with the 5th square off here in this corner, giving them kind of a sense of dynamic balance. And I'm interested in kind of the idea that these 3 squares here are kind of in an alignment with each other on the diagonal that is opposite of the diagonal going this way, and that these 2 squares kind of reach out and resonate with the 5th square in terms of this diagonal over here. So sometimes in a composition, not only do we look right to left or top to bottom, but sometimes we're paying attention to diagonal lines, alignments, axes in the composition. And we're going to talk a lot about that as we get into chapter 2. So this is technically very clean, very well executed, and very well done. And I do appreciate this. And so, Alan, thank you. Thank you very much for sharing this with the group.
No, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. He's unsharing his screen. It's already 1/4 after, so I'd like to do one more if possible, and then maybe jump into my next presentation. But I do want to give you guys the flavor, the taste of the idea of the oral critique, so that when we do our next project, maybe we can spend more time on this and get more folks involved in this kind of oral critique process. But this is the way that it's going to go, where we are going to be sharing our screens and sharing the mic. So it takes some of the focus off of me, and it allows you guys to have more of a voice, more of a presence in this virtual classroom that we are putting together here. So one more time, is there anybody else who'd like to share their project? And if not, that's fine, because I didn't give you any fair warning that I wanted you guys to have your project open and on your desktop so that you could do the sharing. And so I'm going to go into my next thing. I want to now make a little bit of a break and create a segue into the next thing. We did our first project and you guys have got it all done, and I am a little bit behind on grading, so you haven't gotten a score yet from me. You'll probably get either 9 or 10 points on this first project because it was pretty quick and dirty, pretty easy project to do. Either 9 or 10 points is an A because it's 90% of the grade, 90% of 10 points. And the only reason that you might not get 10 points is, you know, small things like technical things. If you are having a problem making the squares look absolutely square, you know, if they're a little bit not square and a little bit more like a rectangle or a trapezoid, or if the edges look a little bit uneven or ripped or torn, I might, you know, knock a point off of that. But otherwise, so those of you who really love points and want to get a perfect score in this class, please don't go crazy and uh, come after me for, you know, knocking 1 point off of your score, because you're still getting, you know, 9 out of 10, which is really good. Nobody should get a perfect score in a class. That's kind of crazy. So anyway, but most of you will get, you know, probably 9 or 10 points on this project. Okay, I've said that. Now I want to switch to project number 2, which I have not uploaded to this class. I think put it together for the morning class, and then I've been answering emails and doing other projects. So as soon as I get offline here, I'm going to put this thing up in the coursework for today so that you guys can work on it. Anyway, project number 2 is something that I call 5 more squares. Oh boy, isn't that fun? Okay, and so I'm going to switch over to my bird's eye view so that you guys can see what I'm up to today. So we'll do that. And I'm going to move my, oops, I'm going to do this. Move the keyboard out of the way so that we can look at the workspace and look at what I'm doing here. I've been collecting squares of different sizes, but also squares of different values. So we have to talk just a little bit about the idea of value as an artistic concept. And then we're going to talk about this particular project called 5 More Squares. I guess I'll set that there, and I'm going to go to my Vogue magazine. Woohoo! So hopefully you guys have a Vogue magazine or some kind of fashion magazine that you can use as a source material for looking for stuff. So this morning I did this with my morning class, and so I've already got a bunch of things kind of sampled here on the side of my workspace, which I'm going to bring back and have handy for me. But when you're paging through the magazine, we're looking at all of the advertisements and articles and looking for shapes or colors or values or lines that we might be able to use in our compositions. And so I'm looking at every single advertisement in the magazine, especially the photographs, to see if there's something in there that I might be able to sample out of the page. So much like a hip hop artist who likes to use sampling to create and build new digital sound environments, we're going to be sampling out of the magazine to try to find things that we can use. And I've been doing that. I've been actually going into the magazine and cutting out pages that I can use to do certain things. So going back to the first project, when I did my 5 squares, I cut out this advertisement that was in the magazine, and I used the background as my black to create my the black squares that I was using. Okay, I kept this, I saved this, so I still have it. And so from this advertisement, as you can see up here, evidenced by this little bite out of the corner of this page, I was able to sample this little black square right here. It's very black, it's very wonderful. This is 3/4 of an inch by 3/4 of an inch. It is the smallest square of the 5 squares that we are going to use, and it is solid black. And that's the first element that we want to make for this composition. But the other squares that I've got are shades of gray. They're what we call in-design values. So we're going to be looking at a value scale. This is something that comes in chapter 6 in our book about value. And although it is way off in the future, we need to talk about it today because it's what we're going to be dealing with for this particular project. It gives us some way of changing up the squares a little bit so that they're not all the same color or same value. And so I'm going to do my screen share thing for just a moment to talk about that if I can. And so I'm going to share this screen with you guys. And this would be what's referred to as a value scale in art or design. Whether you're a graphic designer or an artist, we are very interested in value. That's shades of gray. So on a value scale, usually we have white at one end of the value scale, and we'll have black at the other end of the value scale, and then shades of gray. And in design, we usually refer to this as high key and low key or deep key values. And so my high key values, stepping off of white, are light, middle light, and dark light value. Then I've got my middle values here, my light middle, what we would refer to as middle gray right here. It's a 50% halftone. It's 50%. This is halfway between white and black. And then stepping off of here, we've got our deeper values. We've got our middle and darker values going towards black. And so this is a 10-step value scale with actually 8 different shades of gray between white and black. So that gives you some kind of an idea of the range of values we'll be dealing with. And for this project, I wanted to deal with something that was a very light light. So I tried to sample something that was a 10% gray, 10% high key value. I wanted to sample something that was 20 or 30% of a high key value. I wanted to sample something that was in the mid-tones, something that was middle gray-ish. And I wanted to sample something that was in the deep value range of this value scale. So that gives you an idea. They don't have to be adjacent values. In fact, it's better if you go like every other value in this thing to sample the 4 squares that we're going to be using in this project. Having said that, let me stop, come back to my desktop for this. Now, this is actually a little bit dark. I need to turn on some studio lights here so that we can really see and appreciate the range of values that we've got to work with here. And so we're going to get just a little bit more light on the subject and see if we can make this work. So what I've done is, and in the assignment you're going to have to do this, is the largest square is supposed to be a high key square. And I was able to find a high key background that was just off of white. And so this is about a 10% gray square. It's the high key square, and it is 3 inches by 3 inches. The next square is a high medium key square that is 2 inches by 2 inches. So I've got 3-inch square and a 2-inch square. Then what is starring in a starring role here as our medium gray square is somewhere in the medium to medium dark range of gray. And finally, I have a square here that is a low or deep key square right here. This is not quite black when you compare it to the black square, but it is just 1 or 2 steps on the value scale up from black. And so what we want to do then is take our 4 squares of varying sizes and values and arrange them as a group of 4, and then use the 5th square as our dynamic balancing square. Now, what I want you to do, once again, is to make sure that all of your squares are parallel and perpendicular to the edges of the value of the format frame, so that we don't have anything that is doing that, because when you do that to a square, in this particular context, it creates too much of a focal point, and then it calls attention to itself, and then that creates a different kind of a dynamic balance that doesn't allow us to see some of the more subtle kinds of relationships and balances and tensions that are happening in the composition. When you are working with your group of 4, I would like you to be able to overlap. If you want to overlap, you can. You don't have to. You can group your group of 4 so that they are not overlapping, and that would be fine. If you choose to overlap your squares in the group of 4, there's one thing I do not want you to do. I do not want you to hide one square underneath another square to the extent that it loses its identity as a square and becomes, for all intents and purposes, a rectangle. Because then it is not expressing itself as a square, and then it loses some of its shape power in the composition. So it's okay to overlap a small square over the top of a big square, but it's not okay to lap the big square over the top of a small square so that we can't see that the small square is still a square. This kind of overlapping is okay because I can still see that the smaller square is a square. But by the time we do this kind of thing, it then loses its identity and it becomes a rectangle. That's no good. So you guys get to do as much overlapping as you absolutely want to do. I don't care. But you're going to be creating this group of 4 squares with the 5th square out here someplace in the negative space, trying to balance this whole thing out. This can be done as a vertical format composition or as a horizontal format composition, and it's completely, up to you how you're going to orientate this thing in space and how these 4 squares are going to relate to each other in terms of either overlapping or proximity. The one thing I don't want you to do also is to try to line up the edges of squares so that the edges are in alignment, because then that also becomes too much alignment, and that becomes too strong kind of visual relationship between the squares internally. So they must be offset just a little bit so that they're not in perfect alignment with each other. And then trying to find out where this 5th square wants to be to try to balance out and create a wonderful dynamic balance and or tension in the composition between the group of 4 and the 5th square. So that is going to be our project. I'm going to upload the project details on an assignment sheet, and the assignment sheet specifies the sizes of the squares, but I can just go through them for you really quickly here too. A 3-inch square, that is high key. A 2-inch square, that is a medium high key. A 1.5-inch square, that is somewhere in the medium gray area. And then a 1-inch square, this is 1.5 inches, and this is 1-inch square that is in the deeper key range of values. And then our 3/4 by 3/4 inch square that is jet black. That's going to be the 5th square that has to do the heavy lifting of balancing itself with this set of 4 squares doing its kind of funky thing over here. So you guys can play with this as much as possible. When you have found whatever you think is going to be a good solution to this problem, you can go ahead and glue all your squares down, and then make sure that you can upload this as homework to me. But also I'd like you to have this open on your desktop as a document, as a digital document, so that you can share this with the class when we meet on Wednesday. It's not due until Sunday, but it might be nice to have it done early. I guess I'm going to also start presenting chapter 2 probably on Wednesday. So you don't really have to have this done until Friday-ish would be nice, or early next week. But I'm going to present chapter 2 on Wednesday, and maybe we'll critique a little bit of this project on Friday of this week. So that's my presentation. I'm going to just leave it on my desktop for a second and open up the questions to anybody. Oh, okay. So Daniela is interested in the dimensions of the squares, and so I will do that. The largest square is 3 inches. So the largest square, which is the highest key square, is going to be 3 inches. The next square down is 2 1/2 inches. So 2.5 inches for something that is still in the high key range, but it is darker than the largest square. Then, so 3 inches, 2.5, 2 inches for the medium key square. 2 inches for the medium key square. 1 inch, is that right? I think so. 1 inch for the low key square. The deeper key square would be 1 inch by 1 inch, and then 3/4 of an inch for the black square. And that will also be in our instructions that you'll be able to get. So there you go. That's that. But I got all of those from different kinds of advertisements that I found in the magazine. And so this let's see, hard to say where these came from. I'm going to try to find. Oh yes, this one came from this ad right here, and this one came from this Versace ad right here, and this one came from this ad right here. And so you can kind of see how I carefully cut out a page from each ad, or at least a sliver of a page from each ad that was large enough so that I could get, the 2.5 by 2.5 square or the 3 by 3 inch square in high key out of each one of these ads. So I do like to hang on to the pages that I cut out of the magazines, because you never know when you might have to go back and find something that is a value of that size or that value for your project. And so what's this? What has happened here? I think this got flipped over. Yes, it did. Okay. So now I've got my 4 squares plus my 5th square that I can play with in the compositional space. Okay, let's see. That's about all I've got for you guys today. This is going to be project number 4. It's going to be 5 more squares. And it's something that we're doing as we're getting used to the idea of designing and creating compositions in a compositional space. As we read chapter 2, we're going to look at chapter 2 this week. And chapter 2 introduces us to all the different ways that we're going to organize space in compositions. Chapter 2 is rather long, and it's got lots and lots of stuff in it for how objects in a composition can relate to each other. And we're going to be discussing and looking at all of these different ways that elements, objects in a composition create visual relationships with each other in the compositional space. So that's going to be chapter 2, and I'm going to talk about it on Wednesday. And I'd like you guys to get going with this particular project. When I get off, I'm going to go and upload this so that you guys have all the stuff that you need in the coursework to be able to play with this assignment. Are there any questions? For the good of the order, you guys can unmute your mic and blurt it out if you want. You can type it into the chat and I will read it and I can answer your question and we'll see what happens. And I don't see any other questions coming my way. So I'm going to end this presentation just a little bit early so that you guys have a chance to play with this, or you have a chance to go out and scream a little bit. I did want to make an announcement. I forgot to do housekeeping announcements at the beginning of class. So one housekeeping announcement is that your classmate and colleague Jacob is wanting to start up a photography club. And so there's going to be Clubs Rush on Wednesday of this week in the parking lot behind Tioga Hall between 11 o'clock in the morning and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he's going to set up a table so that he can sign up people who might be interested in the photography club. I sent out a lot of emails to everybody in all my classes about Photography Club with Jacob's email address so that you can email him back to see whether you're interested in photography. If this happens to be a passion for you, this is a fun way of doing things that are outside of the regular classroom situation. In this case, it would be a club kind of a thing that you guys could do together. I think it takes about 10 people in a club to be able to obtain club funding from Associated Student Government, so it is important for you guys to get together and sign up in a club to be able to get club funds. But you might be able to get enough funding to do either a project or take a little trip someplace. Maybe once this pandemic calms down a little bit. So there's that, but photography is something that can be pursued individually and shared with each other on platforms such as Zoom, and so it might be a fun thing to do as a extracurricular activity. Okay, so Clubs Rush is on Wednesday. Please contact Jacob if you're interested in photography and photography club, and otherwise I'm going to say goodbye for now. So thanks for being here. I'll see you guys again on Wednesday at 1 o'clock, and we will start going over the stuff in chapter 2. So thank you very much. Good seeing you all, and I'll see you again on Wednesday.